multimodal myself here. It's not quite put together. I decided to write my notes in the spirit of Maria, and hopefully it'll make sense in a little while. My name is Petia Morozov, and I'm great to see classmates. I went to school with Maria in high school at Montclair Kimberly Academy and shared 4 wonderful years with her. And that has stuck with me in a very powerful way. I'm so sorry, I should have a whiskey by now, but this is I'm not used to this, but I wanted, it was very important for me to share my perspective. And I'm very happy that you and your family invited me to do this. Those were beautiful words, and I don't even know how I could add to them. So I'm going to try. To share this moment with all of you is a gift, however bittersweet it is, and I'm so grateful to be able to do this. To be together throughout the day with you and to meet so many people who actually I feel Facebook has drawn me to know and to want to know. I'm humbled by the enormous light beaming on all of us called Maria. I feel a kindred longing today, a feeling that doesn't come easily to me in words, as you're figuring this out, which is to say, please forgive me as I fumble through this. You see, I'm used to creating objects of design, things like spaces, lighting, landscapes, things that have to speak for themselves, things that are tangible. I don't usually create words, let alone words that end up creating this moment with you. Words that are fleeting to our ears and escape into the ether very all too quickly. Their intangibility, their fragility of the moment, they're very abstract to me. The creation of that is very powerful and takes a different calling altogether. And I think that Maria was someone who created those moments that are bursting, that lead us to 1,000 other moments. And in a weird, powerful way, she's still creating, as we are all here with her, for her, because of her. When Tivadar asked me to share a few words about our high school years together, I started out by collecting stories from classmates, thinking that this would capture Maria's younger self. This story from Jason Bernstein is classic Maria. It's on my phone. Freshman year, Maria and I were in the same French class. I struggled with French, memorizing and rememorizing vocabulary, only to butcher the pronunciation. In class, I sat in awe as Maria rattled off answers to questions I didn't even understand. Her skills seemed perfect and effortless. I believed, or had convinced myself to believe, that she was French. At some point, I sheepishly asked her if she had lived in Paris. She laughed, of course, she wasn't French. She worked at it like all the rest of us. From time to time over the course of the year, she would check in with me to see if I understood the assignment or needed some help. As a 15-year-old, I was touched that a classmate, who I wasn't even particularly close with, would be so thoughtful of and considerate of me. Her act of kindness that year has never left me. And I feel like so many more of us could say those same words. But it was this story from Claudia Ocello that took me on a slight detour. Here's a memory I have of Maria. I worked with her as co-editor of the yearbook during our senior year. I was thinking about this the other day and realizing how utterly calm Maria was during our work on the yearbook, doing layouts by hand, remember actually cutting and pasting, and figuring out a schedule with our yearbook publishing company representative, assigning work to yearbook staff, taking pictures ourselves when no one else did it, staying late to meet deadlines. Our high school lives were so busy and chaotic, with after-school activities and sports, applying to college, homework, and all the personal issues associated with our teen years. Yet I never remember Maria getting angry, upset, or showing anything other than a positive attitude when we were working together. We all might laugh now at how we look or what we wrote about in our high school yearbooks, but we wouldn't be holding the printed copy in our hands were it not for Maria and her even temper and we'll just get it done attitude. She says, wish all my coworkers and bosses were like her. That's this. Claudia's story reminded me what kind of creator of moments she was and continues to be for our class, creating a yearbook of moments that light up along our path to where we are now, a yearbook that can speak for itself. This yearbook is now a 31-year-old object and has stood through several tests of time. It's funny, each time I look through this object, I see a pattern that eerily mirrors how we process that thing called high school. First, when it's hot off the presses, our 18-year-old selves go right to our senior page with photos and notes so encrypted we'd need Morse code to figure out what the hidden messages are. And I'd like to share one of Maria's. Maybe some of you can help me out on this. I need to borrow this. All right, here's one. On Ken, blush Maria. Idea. Riding with CS, Montreal. I think that's Carlos Denziel. I hate cameras. Or Central P storm with SS plus 3 Bs. I mean, you see what I mean, right? This doesn't make any sense. But at the time it does, or at least for the next 5 years while we still have that memory retention. Well, we thought these notes would stay fresh in our minds forever, and that's what being 18 is about. Maybe 5 years later, we might show up at our first reunion to check up on each other and maybe crack open the yearbook and wonder where the other underclassmen ended up, still feeling a sense of seniority. Then at 10 years, we might brave another reunion and use the yearbook to remind ourselves what sports and activities we used to be involved in, maybe even compare our 28-year-old selves to what's on those pages. A reminder of what we aspired to be and look for clues between those pages. And then a whole decade skips by and we're more deeply in life, 20 years out, looking back at those faces, those notes, wondering what the hell we were thinking. Relationships, jobs, kids, failures, successes, illnesses, deaths. That yearbook forces a wider perspective than we'd like. And then life starts speeding up during the next 10 years, as it did for so many of us in our class, and certainly for Maria. It was during that last decade that I got to rekindle my friendship with her. She and her family explored life back in New Jersey, for a little while anyway, and I'll never forget how she practically showed up on my front door with her big brown eyes, wonderful hug, and a simple hello that seemed to say also, how did I end up back here? And it was during those times also when, after she came back to Ithaca, and I could only see her briefly and not as regularly, that I would also see her children grow, experience trips to New York to shop for wigs, and to see her briefer and briefer. This past October, our class celebrated our 30th reunion. I knew Maria was planning on coming, and despite the touch and go, she made it. I couldn't make our 20th reunion, and I wasn't going to miss this one. I decided to host a cocktail party secretly in her honor. About a third of us showed up, which is pretty miraculous for our class, I would say. At the last minute, I whipped out the yearbook and our champagne breakfast album, which I really encourage all of you to look at. This is the last year that our high school hosted what was probably a very illicit practice at the time, real champagne for underage drinkers. And just setting those out just set off a firestorm of wonderful memories. But what was most wonderful was just seeing how we all surrounded ourselves around Maria. She just instantly became the light of the party. It's astonishing to me how graceful she was able to talk about her illness with her classmates, some of them learning for the first time what was going on. And to see what it meant to experience this moment with old friends, perhaps for the last time for her. It was her gift to all of us to be there that night. For the last few weeks, I've been pouring through all 4 yearbooks of our high school experience. And there's some photos of Maria I've highlighted in orange, so I'd like to add that to the albums. And I'm just going to show you, maybe, I'm a designer, so I kind of have to analyze these for, how they first appear. So here's 1983. This is a photo of our high school, the actual building. That's getting a little better, but it's called edification. So I'm not sure that even half of us knew what that word meant, but someone did. 1981, peace of mind. But look at that, horrible, heartbeat. It's almost like, yikes. Let me get out of here. So anyway, they all have a design ethos to them. And it's the job of a yearbook editor to make it that. Let me remind you again what our yearbook looked like. It's her handwriting, if you didn't know. Maybe it's because she was so last minute that she couldn't get the or couldn't pick it out. And I'd like to think that she really wanted to leave her hand on this in every way possible. And that's what I'd like to believe. discovered was an extraordinary creation, mulling through all of these, looking through it and just finding little clues she left. Let's start with the cover. You noticed how different that was. But I'd like to bring up a couple of things. Claudia mentioned how they had to take photos. Well, you can't see how blurry they are, but I'd like to share the captions of the very blurry photos of, say, like the MRC Club. Laura, where are you? You were a member of that club that year. And then the American Field Service. Both very blurry photos. I can't really detect who anyone is. And it doesn't matter because the caption really does do the trick. Whoops, another photo error. Sorry, can you name these people? For the MRC Club. Mr. Bergen, Mr. Matsky, sorry I don't know your name. Mr. Flanto, sorry I don't know your name either. Laura dancing. Well, the other thing about that year is that we were also celebrating 10 years of being in our high school. It was practically a new building still. And she had the crazy idea that why don't we commemorate the last 10 years with an insert, and let's just handwrite the whole thing. So this is all handwritten commemorations of 10 years of history paralleling Montclair Kimberly Academy with the rest of the world. So it was her idea to have 2 columns, the high school column and the world column. And then she found a sucker like me to do all of the handwriting, which probably helped me get into architecture school. But then there's other touches, like how she signed off the book. Some of you can't see this, but it's a baby's rear end. And it just says, the end. One thing that kind of took me, one thing that took me off guard this morning. So this page is our messages from home page, right? So your parents get to say, good luck, congrats. Something really remarkable was left from Maria's family. It doesn't say, Maria, you go girl. It says, the beginning of knowledge starts with the discovery of my ignorance. She was always between those two things. We used to call her gullible in high school. She even picked up on that in her notes. But I think gullible is really where you're just sort of putting yourself at the edge of what you know and what you believe. And that was an incredible gift. I want to leave you with the only words I feel I can share with you to capture the spirit of her creation, and that would be to share her words at the closing of the yearbook. It's really tiny. Memo. For your interest. And this is all like fake typeset with fake typos and all of this. And then she handwrites this. Well, it seems I've spent a lot of time this year waiting for this moment. Now that it is here, I don't really know what to say. Typical. The best thing to do would probably be to say nothing at all and just put some more pictures in this spot. Besides, it takes effort and some thought to write something like this, just as it takes effort to write an English paper, although that doesn't necessarily involve much thought either. But I've put this off long enough. The deadline was last week, I think. Okay, first, I'll apologize, although I shouldn't, for any errors, typos, omissions, and the general non-uniformity of inconsistency of the book. This is partly due to my ineptitude and lack of organization. Oh well. Now I guess I should thank people. Sorry if I leave anyone out. I lost my notebook with all my lists of names of people. Thanks, editors and staff. Thanks, Claudia. Oh, good luck. Thanks, Mrs. Hubin, for tea and cookies and your sense of humor especially. Thanks, Mrs. Jones, for doing more than you should have, and for passing me an art. Without very many homework sketches, that is. Thanks for the mittens, Bonnie. Thanks, Heather, for keeping me together. Was I ever? Thanks, Petia, that's me, for all that lovely handwriting, and Dorothy and Sylvie, too, for all your work on the special section. Thanks, Vic, for coming through when we needed you. Thanks, Mr. Bullard, for letting me into the darkroom when I was locked out. You too, Laura. Thanks, Mrs. DeTore. The school will miss you next year. Thanks, Miss Nance, and thanks, Mrs. Ropke, for helping me to identify people. She's the nurse, by the way. Thanks, Felix. Thanks, Mr. Safura of Sportsfolio for lots of great sports picks. Thanks, everyone who worked long and late on deadlines, especially typing those miserable profiles. And Judy, thanks for the idea for the very last page. Remember, every rear end is a beginning to something else. Sounds nice. Who cares if it's true or not? Who cares? Got off the hook. I was going to make Laura do this, but I want to share on behalf of Laura and Liza, my classmates, a gift that we are giving to our high school in her honor. I'm just going to read it. It's going to be a gift of trees to be planted on the grounds of our high school, next to our newly expanded library. The earth is fresh, and it just makes perfect sense that we would honor her with a tree. We can't be too specific. The site is still under construction, but something will be done. So, however we make it, we want to remember her, our most beloved Maria. So we hope you can come and visit our school.